You're going to be presenting on data discovery through Federated Search.
I can switch to, yeah.
No, I think we'll just have you do what you do. What you do. So give me one moment, and then we will bring it.
As it's calling it up, I'll introduce myself. So, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Chantelle. I'm a research associate with the World Data Systems International Technology Office. It's one of my hats. I'm one of the incoming digital geometrics for the Arctic Data Committee as well, and a part-time data specialist for the Polar Data Academy. So, yeah.
Please go ahead.
I will be here to talk about data discovery through Federated Search pathways. Okay. So the Federated Search was first came out of the Polar working group. So Polar has been alluded to in multiple presentations already. The Polar Data Discovery and Research group. It was a collaboration between SEUS, so the Southern Ocean Observatory System, ADC, Arctic Data Committee, and the SCEDM group. I believe I've been saying for about a couple of years now that they've been in operation for about 5 years, so we're probably at that 7 or 8 year mark. But when 7 or 8 years ago, when the group of repository managers came together, they were interested in exploring pathways on how to make federated search achievable. There were some, concepts that they had to work through, so such as federated search, and why they're interested is it allows users to search multiple metadata catalogs in a single user interface. So as Oystein's presentation, you could see that it is quite the spread out landscape. There's about 100 different repositories that have been interested or participating. Our Polar working group is at the 80 member mark. Some are repositories more active than others. But that means that researchers, scientists, and the like are going to 80 different repositories to search for their data sets or search for new data sets, and quite labor intensive, as I'm sure you all experienced that here. So the challenges including mismatches between vocabularies, mismatches between metadata standards, as there's not one metadata standard that is applied across the board, and then dealing with the interoperability of these. So yeah, translating metadata records and then trying to keep them up to date as we progress through the years. So the QR code up on the right actually will bring you to the Polar working group page. There's a bunch of resources, membership lists, and workshops, all the links to all the stuff that Polar has put out over the years. So in order to tackle the federated search, we use a 3-pronged approach. So we actually have the federated search portal that is now up and running for 2 years. We had the 1-year pilot, and it's been fully up for a year now. We also have produced a best practices guidance documentation for implementing schema.org, and that's how repositories will actually be harvested and included in the federated search. And then it was all based off of the community-based layer of input and collaboration, and making sure it really is a portal that is used by our repositories. It is served. There's no point in us putting resources into a federated search if the community doesn't find it valuable. So this includes our Polar to Global hackathons that happen bi-monthly, and making sure we're aligned with other international initiatives moving forward, because we're not the only domain looking at this problem. So again, what is specifically the Polar Federated Search? The QR code will bring you to the actual search user interface. So right now, there's a whole bunch of practically consortium repositories that you can search at the metadata dataset level. So it will bring you back. I'll have it in about a slide, I believe. It'll bring you back to the original repository source. So you're only looking at the metadata level. It was developed, or we had resources from the World Data Systems International Technology Office for a dedicated developer to actually, spend the past 2 years building the pilot, getting community feedback to make sure it was still useful, and applying changes. Right now, our servers are hosted with Data One. They've been a fantastic resource and support in helping the federated search get off the ground. And it's currently maintained by the Arctic Institute of North America with, Shannon and Munish at the back. So the intention is creating it's just to make sure we're serving the international community, as I've mentioned, but both Arctic and Antarctic repositories and researchers. And it was all used to be fast, reliable, but also low cost. There's no fee needed for repositories to participate, and portable. So, I mean, we've seen multiple instances in the past where something similar has come up, funding disappears, and now it's no longer being maintained and updated. So we wanted to create the Federated Search to be able to picked up, dropped off at, say, another host, whoever may have the funding around the globe, you know, how those things can go, and then have it maintained that way. We are testing those limits currently as it was maintained by our dedicated WES web developer, who is no longer with us. And so we've tested moving that over and having our great web developer Munish at ANA. So we're not quite there to do the turnkey operation, but it is still work in progress as we're only 2 years in. So when you make a search, go to the Federated Search site, this is what it will look like. You are able to search using key terms, dates, times, authors, and such, and then it'll bring up a metadata record that matches. But the key one is your DOIs, your titles, your keywords, your abstracts. You can kind of drop down, tailor to what you're actually looking for, but it brings you back again to that main repository. That helps us not have to deal with any data access restriction. It gives all of those rights, remains those rights with the repository. And this is really just a search tool. So currently we have about 23 repositories that are integrated into our Federated Search. It kind of, one highlight you want to see is that we have Data One, which has a couple repositories that they were already indexing. So without those repositories actually having to complete the schema.org markup, we were able to index Data One and kind of aggregate the aggregator and bring it in. So it saves some of the use time of those repositories. And we also have different strategies such as CCADI, where they actually built their own API, so application programming interface, to mediate their metadata records and then produce an endpoint for us to kind of grab. So they were able to, you know, do the crosswalks of their metadata records the way they wanted to, and then still be harvested and indexed with us. Oh, a couple more new ones that I didn't realize cut off. So feel free to let me know. You're there. Don't worry. Just it's not there. So yeah, in the past 12 months of 1 full year of production, what are our impacts? We have about 900 users, 108 returning users. So you know that's just not me clicking on it 100 times, 1,000 times, trying to get those numbers up. And it's been, yeah, variable throughout, but different ways that they've actually been trying to access the Federated Search is through folder, mostly through socialization, as you will see. So this is new users to the actual search over the past year. And those spikes are actually after talks I've given at various conferences. So the very first one to the right is right after our ArcticNet presentation. The middle one is after ASSW that happened in Vienna in February, and then the July one. I couldn't figure out which quite. I'm pretty sure it's related to a conference presentation, or maybe that's just where everybody thought it was a great time to hit the Federated Search. And then the last KPI that I wanted to highlight is that it is actually being picked up and used all around the world. So again, not quite. Oh, sorry, that is a full map on the slides. So it's not just Canada picking it up as that's where it's being hosted. It has actually been used throughout, which was a really cool interest to me, at the very least. So how do repositories participate? Going into the semantic technology side of things, the QR code up on the right will bring you to the best practices documentation, which was community collaborated and made at the Polar to Globals. It actually outlines how repositories implement schema.org to become integrated into the Federated Search letters or controlled vocabulary that is lightweight, sits on top of existing infrastructure, and then again, you provide an endpoint And that's how the federated search indexes you. So it enhances interoperability, discoverability without conforming to certain metadata standards. As I said, depending on the domain that it is, you're going to have a different metadata standard. We've worked with crosswalking these standards, so you can still apply it in your various spaces. Again, it's supposed to be lightweight, easy to use. And then very worst case scenario, say the community says, no, we actually don't care about the federated search, no longer interested. After completing the schema.org markup, you are still going to be indexed by the Google dataset search. So through the implementation of schema.org, it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal, which I'm not going to complain about. So this is an example of what it looks like on the back end, more technical side of things. You have your controlled vocabularies labeled kind of at the top, and then it is just kind of put alongside your existing metadata terms. So it is based off of this blurry Excel sheet. This is the various metadata schemas, and then it's been crosswalked through the Research Data Alliance Research Metadata Schemas Working Group, who have mapped the schema.org terms to, I believe there are about 14 different metadata standards, which are published online. Yeah, so one thing I did want to highlight is that since this community collaboration and use of semantic technologies that have already been established, like I said, we weren't here to reinvent the wheel and try and force a new way of implementing things. The SOSO, also known as the Science on Schema Working Group at ESIP, which is the Earth Science Information Partners, they're the ones who actually created or utilized the existing schema.org vocabulary for the Earth Science domain. So they're the ones that provide the detailed guidelines of how to do the actual implementation, like the technical web development side. Polder came and provided guidance on the mandatory, recommended, and optional terms relating to Polar specific metadata. So we provide those recommendations on what terms have to be mandatory and that you actually use your recommended optional to be included in the federated search, and it just aligns with the search options actually through the federated search, and it gives Polar specific examples. So it's a subset of SOSO terms. It is actually completed. Forgot to update that one, but I like to visualize it this way. It's kind of, you have a schema.org as your top layer. SOSO gives you the kind of more detailed, more depth of everything related to environmental schema.org and how to apply it. And then Polders came and picked and chose what we thought was the most relevant to make it even more lightweight than the Science on Schema options. So the last prong that we had was the community input and collaboration. So we are making sure that we are the harvesting technology that is behind the federated search is aligned internationally. So such as the Ocean Info Hub, Otis, we are both using the Gleaner harvesting technology that was established by Doug Phil. Both our web developers worked kind of in tandem to help develop and work through all the implementation fixes. We do participate in the Science on Schema monthly calls. So again, if there's any development or things that have changed to the actual implementation guidance for the web developers, we will be updating our best practices documentation to try and save some time. And then, yeah, we make sure that community has the opportunity to give feedback on what's working with the federated search, what they would prefer to see through the Polar to Global bi-monthly hackathon. We get to see, we get a 1-hour time slot that's graciously provided to help get that feedback. So next steps, we have the Polar working group set out for federated search. It's there. We would still like to develop it as it is not the most advanced search interface out there right now. But it's a slower process as we have, it's more in-kind support from our partners at ANA. We were playing with the idea of having a speaker presentation series from those international initiatives such as Ocean Info Hub, I believe there's Blue Cloud, and there was one other one that we were thinking about, inviting them to our 1-hour time slot at the Polar to Globals to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page and cross collaborating. We are looking to use some knowledge mobilization strategies, look into that more, how we use the current frameworks and apply it to our set needs, and we are looking to set a next 5-year goal. So this can be as ambitious or as easy as possible, but we will be discussing this further at the next Polar to Global. So if you have any needs or passions, please feel free to let us know, because it's a great community to work with. So other planned updates to the Polder website specifically is that I'm going to have to update what is actually being indexed from each repository. So those recommended mandatory terms and whatnot, kind of have it more laid out and easily accessible for interested repositories who may be thinking about doing the schema.org implementation. I want to make a better description of who is currently participating, and again, recognizing and highlighting our repositories who have gone through the struggle of doing the schema.org implementation, so they can also point to it to show that they're a part of international initiatives. And we will be doing a name change, just because the Polar Federated Search, as I've been going around talking about it, Federated Search isn't the most intuitive name for researchers. Harder to remember, I've been told. I've been saying it so much that I barely recognize it. But so feel free to fill out the Google form. Right now, it is looking like the Polar Data Search is going to be the name change in the lead. Easy to remember, easy to Google, kind of that stuff for our researchers who might not get the concept of Federated Search if they're more on the less technical side. But yeah, so feel free to, it takes less than a minute to fill up the name change. We'd love your input. And we were hoping to do a slogan too, because that's fun, why not? And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for Chantelle? I'll lead off with a quick one. So we implemented schema.org in the AADC.
Yep.
We thought that it was quite reasonably good to implement. But if you were a very new, or if you were a very small organization, what kind of ask would they need in terms of development support? What would be the avenue for a very small organization to start implementing schema.org?
That's a great question. So we actually do have workshops that have been recorded. We've been helping the New Zealand, Antarctica, New Zealand. Yeah, it's getting switched up. Do the implementation. So we do provide one-on-one support. The best practices guidance and combined with the so-so, you can work through it as fast or as slow as possible. And then combined with the workshop, we're hoping it's kind of good 2-for-1, but we do actually provide, support if needed through repositories who have actually done this implementation. They can do it that way. But other than that, I will say I'm not a web developer, so I don't know the actual tediousness. But not to call out, I believe it was all those organizations, Martin. It took them a couple of hours with a dedicated developer to actually do that implementation. But yeah, I can't say from experience, unfortunately.
Yeah, but so that's good to know if you don't have a developer, but it's if you, that's when you would be able to sort of lean on that one-to-one support you talked.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, if you are operating a database, there's somebody who has to maintain it.
Yeah.
Have some sort of technical ability to maintain it. So yeah, in an ideal world, I guess, but
yeah. That's fair enough. Any other questions? Frank.
So you said there's a 5-year goal plan. Does it mean that the WDS is supporting it for the next 5 years? Well,
no. So
whoa.
I'm like, should we turn off recording? No, unfortunately, WSITO is no longer supporting this. But with that said, I've actually moved into a PhD role at Carleton. Starting full-time December, where I can help continue to work on this and make sure that things are still moving forward. I'll be working with Peter Pulsberg. So it's not going anywhere just yet.
Great. Thank you very much, Chantelle.